My name is Eliana Cho, and until this Christmas, I had gone nearly 7 years without stepping foot inside my parents' house. Not because I was estranged, not officially, but because somewhere between their backhanded compliments and the way they poured all their warmth into my brother's life while treating mine like a temporary inconvenience, I decided it was quieter, cleaner, safer to love them from a distance. I had left that house at 18 with a half-packed suitcase and a full scholarship to a state college they called decent enough, and I hadn't looked back until I got the invitation. A simple email from my mother with the subject line, Christmas dinner, followed by a 2-sentence body, come home, your brother's bringing someone special. I stared at that message for a long time, rereading it like it might morph into something warmer. Like maybe she meant, we miss you, or it would mean a lot, but no, it was just that, an obligation request for a daughter they never knew what to do with, because Eliana was quiet. Eliana was practical. Eliana didn't shine the way Adam did when he walked into a room with his movie star grin and tech startup swag. I wasn't jealous, just painfully aware of the imbalance, of the way love flowed to him like an open faucet, while I waited for drops that never came. But this year was different. This year, I had something they didn't know about, and I was curious what would happen when they saw who I had become. So, I said yes. I flew in 2 nights before Christmas, landing in San Francisco beneath a gray sky, riding an Uber through old neighborhoods that hadn't changed much, except now I was seeing them through a lens shaped by tenacity, late nights, and risks I took alone. The house looked the same, with its chipped white paint and overly large wreath on the door, the kind of place that tried hard to look more expensive than it was. My mother opened the door like she was surprised I'd come. Eliana, she said, like the name was a question. Hi, Mom. She pulled me into a light hug and quickly turned back to the kitchen. We're just finishing the seating chart. Of course they were. Inside, nothing had changed. The framed photos were still all Adam's milestones. Debate trophies, graduation, his photo with the governor when his app got mentioned at some youth entrepreneur. My face appeared exactly once, a 3rd-grade school portrait half tucked behind the Wi-Fi router. Dad greeted me with a nod from the recliner. You made it. Flight okay? He asked, not looking up from his tablet. Yeah, I said. It was smooth. That night passed in stiff small talk and polite smiles. Adam arrived the next morning with his girlfriend, Savannah, all glowing skin and exaggerated praise. This house is so charming, she chirped, as if she'd been paid to play nice. Mom beamed, already planning their wedding in her mind. Adam had started a new venture capital fund after selling his first company to a larger firm. News I only learned from Savannah as she gestured to his Tesla and gushed about his genius. At dinner, the table overflowed with food and laughter that seemed to rise only when Adam spoke. I was seated on the corner bench, the one with the loose leg, tucked away like an afterthought. The gift exchange started after dessert. Elegant boxes passed around, names written in calligraphy, bows fluffed with care. For Savannah, Mom said sweetly, handing her a box of luxury skincare. For Adam, Dad added, placing a sleek new iPad in his lap. My name wasn't called. Not once. I waited, smiled, said nothing. Finally, I cleared my throat. Was there one for me? The room quieted like someone had pressed mute. Mom blinked. Oh, Eliana, I thought you said you didn't need anything. I looked at Adam, who tried to hide his smirk behind a sip of champagne. I didn't say that, I replied evenly. But it's okay. You're always so independent, Dad said, as if that excused it. We figured you didn't care about material things. Right, I said softly, letting the silence grow uncomfortable. I suppose some things are more valuable when they're earned anyway. Savannah shifted in her seat. Adam looked up, finally sensing something brewing. You okay, sis? He asked. I nodded. Yeah, I said. Just thinking. I actually brought a gift of my own this year, but I think I'll wait for the right moment. And just like that, the mood changed. They didn't know it yet, but the girl they overlooked had quietly built an empire. And tonight I'd show them exactly what they forgot to see. I spent most of Christmas Eve in my childhood room, which now doubled as a makeshift storage space stacked with Adam's old college boxes and faded Christmas decorations that hadn't seen daylight in years. A symbolic reminder that I was always second tier, even in the walls that once held my teenage daydreams. The bed was still mine, though, twin-sized and squeaky, and I laid on it fully clothed, scrolling through my phone, reviewing notifications from my team, who despite the holiday were buzzing with momentum because my startup, yes, my startup, was launching its third major international partnership in the new year. None of them knew, not Mom, not Dad, and certainly not Adam, who had made a habit of underestimating me ever since he won his first science fair, and Mom said, "Maybe Eliana will be your assistant one day." Funny how things age. I closed my eyes for a moment and thought about everything they didn't know. About the nights I spent teaching myself Python under cheap dorm lighting. About the 2 failed business ideas that nobody saw because I never shared them. About the angel investor who took a chance on me after I calmly tore apart his existing infrastructure model in a coffee shop pitch that wasn't even scheduled. Remembered being 19 and eating dollar noodles for dinner while debugging a server at 2 a.m., whispering, "Just one breakthrough, that's all I need." And how, years later, it came, quietly, as most victories do, when my AI-driven analytics platform started detecting predictive consumer behavior with over 90% accuracy. We named it EmberScan. Within 9 months, it was licensing contracts to 3 Fortune 500 companies. I'd built a multi-million-dollar portfolio under the name eCho Labs, legally sealed, strategically faceless. I didn't want them to know until I was ready. I was ready now. The next morning, I came downstairs, dressed in clean lines, black slacks, cream blouse, tailored coat draped like a quiet warning. My mother glanced up from the stove and blinked. "Well, don't you look professional?" "Just felt like dressing up," I said casually. Adam walked in moments later, all swagger and cologne, looking like a sponsored ad for his own success. "Still no gifts under the tree for Eliana," he teased. "Guess Santa couldn't find your LinkedIn." Savannah giggled too loud. "Oh, stop," she said, brushing his arm. "She's probably doing great. She's just not flashy like you." "Right," Adam said. "Low profile is a choice." I smiled faintly. "It is." After brunch, the family settled into the living room for coffee and the inevitable slideshow. Adam had prepared a presentation of his year, complete with photos from Monaco, Singapore, and his TEDx talk that Mom insisted on replaying twice. "He's always been a star," she whispered to Savannah, loud enough for me to hear. "I swear, I knew from the moment he was born." I set down my coffee. "Can I borrow the screen?" "What for?" Mom asked, almost startled. "Just something I wanted to share since it's Christmas." They exchanged curious glances, but eventually moved aside. I connected my tablet to the living room screen and took a deep breath. The first slide was a title card, EmberScan Technologies, a story of building in silence. "Is this a presentation?" Dad asked, puzzled. "Of what?" "My company," I said, advancing to the next slide. An infographic showing revenue growth from year 1 to year 3, ending in a clean, bold number. $28,700,000, 0 cents. Silence. "Your company?" Adam asked, the smirk faltering. "Yes," I said. "I founded it, own it, lead it." Another slide, logos of major clients, a financial services giant, a luxury brand group, and a global logistics firm. "You work for them?" Mom asked, voice small. "No," I said. "They license from me." Savannah's mouth dropped open. "But you never said." "Why would I?" I asked. "No one ever asked." I clicked to the next slide. Our global map. Offices in Austin, Seoul, and Berlin. I started from a dorm room, I said. Now I employ over 60 people across 3 countries. We're scaling next year and we're profitable. "You're making this up?" Adam said, laughing nervously. "No offense, but you're Eliana." "Exactly," I said. "Eliana who stayed quiet, listened carefully, worked relentlessly. Eliana who didn't need to be celebrated to be successful." Mom looked pale. Dad cleared his throat. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Because you only listen when someone else validates it," I said calmly. "Adam makes a pitch and you celebrate. I build an empire, and you forget I exist." "That's not fair," Mom whispered. "Isn't it?" I replied. "When I brought home a certificate in high school, you said, 'That's cute.' When Adam got a participation ribbon, you framed it. I just learned to stop sharing." The room was frozen now. No laughter, no small talk, just the weight of revelation. So, I added, unplugging my tablet, Merry Christmas. I turned to go, but my words lingered in the room like smoke. The invisible girl had just made herself impossible to ignore. I didn't go back upstairs right away. I walked outside instead, letting the cold December air bite through my blouse as I stood on the porch that once felt like a cage. Inside, I could hear muffled voices, the slow unraveling of a family that just realized the daughter they dismissed was quietly holding power they couldn't even imagine. I didn't need to listen to know the script. Dad would say I blindsided them. Mom would ask why I kept secrets. And Adam would scoff, make jokes, try to downplay it until the silence forced him to reckon with what I'd just revealed. I stood there staring out at the street, at the same cracked sidewalk I used to ride my bike on as a kid, back when I thought love meant being noticed. And when I didn't get that, I assumed the problem was me, but I know better now. I'd been building a life not to prove them wrong, but to prove myself right. I wasn't angry. I was free. After a while, the door creaked open behind me. Ileana. It was Adam. I didn't turn around. You embarrassed them, he said flatly. You always did hate being upstaged, I replied. Come on, he said, his voice straining for cool. You really expect us to believe you built all that by yourself? I turned to face him. No, I said. I had a team, but the vision, the leadership, the risk, that was all me. He folded his arms, trying to look amused. So what now? You want us to grovel? No, I said. I just wanted you to know. I'm not who you think I am. I never was. This whole thing, he muttered, is just petty. You think it's petty because you're used to being the only one who wins? I said calmly. But this wasn't about you. It was about taking up the space I earned. He opened his mouth, then shut it. For once, he had nothing. I walked past him and back into the house. Mom was sitting on the couch, eyes glassy. Dad was pacing. Savannah was nowhere to be seen. You could have warned us, Dad said sharply. Warned you? I repeated. What would that have changed? You've been doing all this behind our backs, Mom said as if I'd betrayed them. You never asked what I was doing, I reminded her. Not once in the last 5 years, she blinked. We thought you were doing okay. You mean you hoped I wasn't, I said, because if I stayed small, it made your choices easier to justify. That's not true, she whispered. Then why didn't I get a gift? I asked, soft but cutting. You remembered Savannah. You remembered Adam. You remembered the mailman, but not me. Silence. We didn't think you'd care, she said. You've always been so self-sufficient. No, I said. I just learned early that expecting kindness from you was a setup for disappointment. That's unfair, Dad snapped. We gave you food, shelter, school. That's called parenting, I said, not a favor, and not an excuse for emotional neglect. Adam stood stiffly behind them now, arms crossed. This is ridiculous. Is it? I asked. Or is it just the first time you've had to see me clearly? What do you want from us? Mom asked. An apology? A trophy? I don't want anything, I said. This wasn't a power play. It was a mirror. I watched their faces reflect it. Everything they never said, never saw, never offered. And what are we supposed to do with this mirror? Dad muttered. That's up to you, I said. But I'm done pretending I'm less just to make you more comfortable. I walked to the kitchen and poured a glass of water. Steady hands, steady breath. I wasn't the same girl they boxed into a corner. I'd outgrown the frame. When I turned back around, they were still standing there, unsure whether to shout or apologize. So I gave them a choice. I'm staying at the Westin, I said. If you'd like to talk, not argue, not accuse, but talk, you can come find me. If not, this can be our last Christmas. Either way, I'll be fine. I grabbed my coat and walked out, not slamming the door, not flinching, just walking like someone who'd reclaimed every piece of herself they once ignored. I didn't need permission. I didn't need applause. I had my own keys now. To my future, my peace, and my power. I checked into the Westin just after sunset, rain streaking the glass, city lights flickering like a quiet welcome, and for the first time in years, I felt still. Not vindicated, not triumphant, just settled. The suite was simple, intentional, and I opened my laptop to find Emberscan still expanding while my family was just beginning to ask if I mattered. I shut the screen, stared at the sky, and thought about how small their house had once made me feel. Now, it was just an address from another life. The next morning, I found an email from my mother. "Please meet us before dinner. We owe you that much." I didn't reply. I just went, not for closure I needed, but one I now had the power to give. The house was quiet when I arrived. No Adam, no noise, just my parents, standing still. "We didn't get you anything," Mom said, holding a backup gift bag. That was wrong. "It was never about a gift," I replied. "It was about being seen." "We thought you were fine," Dad offered. "Because I didn't cry?" I asked. "Because I carried it quietly?" They nodded, slowly, like people seen without flinching. "Do you want to stay for dinner?" Mom asked. "Just us." I said yes, but only if we talked as people, not roles. And we did. I told them what Emberscan was, what I'd led, what I'd built. They listened. Not to be polite, but because for the first time they were trying to understand. "You really run all of it?" Mom asked. "I do," I said. "It's not just work, it's responsibility." They didn't offer apologies or hugs, but they offered honesty and recognition. And that was more than I'd ever been given before. As I left, Mom hugged me, slightly longer this time. "We'll try harder," she said. "Trying is a start," I replied. That night, back in my hotel room, I watched the bay glow beneath the city and realized revenge doesn't always mean destruction. Sometimes it means rebuilding what they tried to erase. I didn't need to be invited back in. I'd built the door myself, and I was already walking through it. 2 days after Christmas, I flew back to New York, leaving behind the house I once shrank inside and the people who measured my worth in silence. The flight was quiet, but my thoughts weren't. I kept replaying the look on my father's face when he realized I hadn't just grown up. I'd outgrown the version of me they held on to. I arrived at my apartment just after midnight, greeted by my doorman and the stillness of a space I built on my own terms. I made tea, sat on the balcony, and let the cold night air remind me I had finally said everything that needed saying. The next morning, Emma and I reviewed projections, celebrated growth, discussed soul, and when she asked if I was good, I said, "More than good, settled." That afternoon, Savannah texted me. "Didn't know about the gift thing. What you did was badass." I replied simply, "Thanks." Took me a while to realize I didn't need their approval. She said Adam's ego was fractured. I didn't gloat. I just let the truth hang there. Some messages don't need replies. Over the next week, Emberscan landed another deal. I spoke on ethical AI in Austin, and a young engineer told me I inspired her. I remembered being that girl, unsure, invisible, desperate to believe someone like her could lead. When I returned home, I found a letter in my mailbox. My mother's handwriting. "We've been thinking about what you said. I want to do better. I'd love to visit and see what you've built." I folded it, set it aside. No need to rush forgiveness. Growth takes time, even for those who show up late. That evening, as the skyline glowed and the sun dipped behind the city, I felt a different kind of power settle inside me. Not revenge, not control, just reclamation. I'd waited years for someone to finally see me, but it wasn't until I saw myself that the world started catching up. And now, they were. One letter, one conversation, one moment at a time. The first Monday of the new year, I stood before my team at our New York headquarters, outlining Q1 goals with the kind of steady confidence that no longer felt like armor. It was just me. No one saw me as someone's sister or daughter. They saw a founder, a leader, a builder. After the meeting, I lingered in the boardroom, watching my reflection in the glass, thinking about California, how it didn't stir bitterness, just clarity. That afternoon, a package arrived at the office. No return address. Inside, a silver bracelet and a note. To Eliana. From someone who got it wrong. My mother's handwriting. Not an apology. A question. I placed it in my drawer, let time answer. That night at dinner, Emma raised her glass and said, "To Eliana, the quiet force who made this possible." They toasted. I smiled. This was the validation I never got at home, earned through grit, not inheritance. I walked back through frozen streets, phone buzzing with Slack updates and one new voicemail. My father's voice was quiet. We watched your panel. Your mother cried. We didn't know. I hope you'll let us see it someday. I didn't cry, but I saved it. Not because I needed it, but because it was real. That weekend, Sarah invited me to a small women in tech gathering. No panels, no buzzwords, just stories. I shared mine, not for applause, but for the quiet girl in the back who hadn't spoken. Afterward, she asked, "How did you stop needing their approval?" I said, "When I realized I'd already earned my own." She nodded. We exchanged emails. I loved. Lighter. Rooted. I didn't need their love to survive anymore. Eating, I already had. And now I was thriving. Not for revenge, but for purpose. February came with short days and long meetings. Tokyo partners, Fortune 100 negotiations, and our first nonprofit-focused AI prototype. Emberscan wasn't just surviving anymore, we were leading. And for the first time, I wasn't hiding behind initials or silence. My name was out there, my voice mattered. Then came the email, subject line, but something in me clicked yes. 2 nights later, I stood at my parents' door in San Francisco. The house looked the same, but it felt different. Quieter. Lighter. Maybe it was me. Inside, the table was set for 3. No Adam, no TV, just them. "Thanks for coming," Mom said softly. We wanted to try again. Dinner was simple, familiar, the kind of meal meant to say what words hadn't. "We saw your interviews," Dad said. "Didn't understand all of it, but we're proud." "You missed a lot," I said. "But yes, I was always there." "Adam's shadow was louder," Mom admitted. "And safer," Dad added. "But your quiet built everything," I replied. They nodded. That was new. After dinner, Mom handed me a photo album. "Didn't realize we had this many of you," she said. In my hotel room, I flipped through it, proof I had existed in that house, even if blurred into the background. The next day, I spoke at a university panel about women in innovation. A student asked, "What would you tell your younger self?" I paused. They don't see you because they've trained themselves not to. But that doesn't mean you're invisible. Build anyway. One day they'll have no choice but to look. After the talk, I checked my phone. A message from Dad. "You were magnificent." I didn't cry. I just saved it. Not because I needed it, but because, for once, it was real. Spring arrived in New York with soft blossoms and new contracts, but what struck me most wasn't the success. It was the quiet relief of no longer needing to explain myself. I wasn't proving anything anymore. I had built the table they once denied me a seat at, and now others were asking how I did it. One morning, I hosted a roundtable for 5 first-generation founders. When one asked, "What do you do when the people you love never see you?" I thought of my mother asking for help with a savings account, my father asking about AI books, even Adam, still distant but quieter now. "You stop waiting," I told her. "You build anyway, and when they finally open their eyes, great. If not, you're already shining." The next day, I posted a story, not about metrics, but about the Christmas dinner where I sat ignored and chose instead to reveal what I'd built. It went viral. People saw themselves in it, those who'd been overlooked and had still created something real. My favorite message came from Mrs. Nolan, my high school computer science teacher. "I always rooted for you, even when no one was looking." I stared at her words, remembering the girl I used to be, and replied, "Thank you. I'm still building." And I am. A month later, I closed on a home in Hudson Valley. Intentional. Quiet. Mine. I invited my parents because they asked, and this time it felt honest. My mother walked the land slowly. "You really did this," she said. "All of it." I nodded. That evening, as we sat on the porch, my dad said, "We still think about that Christmas, the one where we forgot your gift." I smiled. "I think about it too." "We see you now," he said. "Good," I replied, because I was never asking for a gift, I was asking to be seen. And now I am. Not out of revenge, not to prove a point, but because I refused to shrink. If you've ever been the one passed over, know this. Power doesn't have to roar. Sometimes it whispers until the world can't ignore it anymore. Build in silence. Lead with clarity. Let them miss the moment, and let yourself become the miracle. If this story found you, drop a comment. Share what you've built, who you've become, and what you're claiming for yourself. Your moment is coming, and when it does, may you rise not for applause, but because you always knew you could.